threat to the Middle East and Egypt, but in the same time there is an actual threat which is affecting the Egyptian sovereignty, and that is the occupation of the British troops to our territory.
There are persistent reports of increased communist activity throughout the Middle East, particularly among the poor and the working classes, for example. Do you regard this as a threat to the stability of the Middle East?
Well, the communist activities in the Middle East are due to the British occupation and the British colonization, and in the same time are due to the low standards of living. And I think that the communist activities are cause for instability in the Middle East.
Sir, what is your domestic policy toward communism?
Well, we want to stop the communism activity in our country. But first of all, we have to get rid of the British occupation and the British imperialism. And second, we have to raise the standard of living.
Sir, there is admitted suspicion of United States policy and motives in this part of the world. Why is this, do you think, and what do you think can be done about it?
I think this is due to the backing of the United States to the imperialism in this area, I mean in the Middle East. And unless the United States will try to help the nationalists and the nationalists in this area, I think the people will lose faith in the United States and in the principles of freedom and in the free world.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. This is Frank Kearns in Cairo, returning you to CBS Radio and CBS Television in New York. Another major foreign policy facing your government, I believe, is the question of Israel. If I remember correctly, you listed as one of your revolutionary goals the restoration of the honor of the Egyptian army. Can this be done without re-engaging the Israeli army?
The restoration of the honor of the Egyptian army is taking place now already.
What do you regard as the minimum terms for a settlement of the Arab-Israeli dispute?
The minimum which we can accept regarding Israel is that Israel should put into effect the resolutions of the United Nations.
Sir, I'm wondering about reaction to the detailed statement made recently by the American Assistant Secretary of State, Mr. Henry Byrode, about the U.S. Middle Eastern policy. Do you regard that policy as furthering the cause of peace in the Arab-Israeli dispute?
Well, we are waiting to see the results of this policy.
Sir, how do you visualize Egypt's role in the Arab world?
Egypt, as a leader to the Arab world, has the responsibility of guarding the interests of the Arab nations with the cooperation of their government.
How do you visualize Egypt's role in the Muslim world at large?
Well, Egypt also has the task of leading the Muslim world towards their mutual interests, aiming for the peace of their countries.
Sir, in the current worldwide Cold War between East and West, do you believe that Egypt can remain neutral?
Well, Egypt is doing its best to protect its interests from the Cold War which is going now between East and West. And in the same time, we are doing our best in order not to have extension of the Cold War in this area.
Sir, do you regard Soviet Russia as a potential ally or a potential threat to the Middle East?
Although one can consider the communism as a potential threat to the Middle East and Egypt, but at the same time we cannot forget that there is an actual threat existing in our country, and that is the
turns in Cairo. 2 years ago this summer, a group of young patriots decided to put an end to Egypt's some 50 centuries of autocratic rule. They staged a sensational coup d'etat here in Egypt, especially in Cairo. Then they exiled former King Farouk, abolished the monarchy completely. They set up the world's newest republic and started the revolution, which has been going on ever since. The founder, organizer, and leader of this revolution is a 36-year-old lieutenant colonel in the army, Jamaal Abdel-Nasser, who is now Prime Minister of the Republic of Egypt. What are the outstanding domestic problems facing your government?
Huh?
Mr. Prime Minister, your revolution will be 2 years old this coming July, I believe. How do you visualize the future development of the revolution? In other words, what has to take place before you can turn over the revolution intact to the people?
The aim of the revolution is to set a new democratic life in Egypt. Before turning over the revolution to the people, we must be sure that no more corrupt elements are in power to have the ruling of this country again.
What are the outstanding domestic problems now facing your government?
The major domestic problem which is facing our government is production. We want to raise the production of the country in order to raise the standard of living of the people.
Mr. Prime Minister, the world has been watching with intense interest the Anglo-Egyptian struggle over the Suez Canal zone. Has there been any recent positive developments in this field?
I'm afraid that Britain is still thinking of the way of the 18th century. I can say that there is no more development in that field.
Sir, if no satisfactory solution appears possible, what will be your next step?
Well, as for our next step, it is a secret which I cannot reveal.